Ladies and gentlemen, transition to decarbonized road transport is a must for fighting climate change. And in this context, electrified mobility powered by renewable energy is essential. E-mobility has moved up on the strategic agenda of industry executives, policymakers, investors, and other stakeholders. But even though it has become a top priority, ending the era of the combustion engine is still a major challenge for large parts of the planet. In this session, we will take a look at where we stand in the e-mobility journey, what can be learned from the countries that are leading the transition, and what needs to be done in less advanced countries to master the e-mobility journey. My name is Andreas Schlosser. I'm a partner with Arthur de Little, heading the global automotive group of the firm, and I'm very glad to be here today. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our three guests here on the stage. Let me please first introduce Ruba Abdelal. Ruba is an innovative mobility expert based in Dubai. She's managing multiple innovative mobility projects, establishing ecosystems for new mobility services and technologies, and through her work with very different stakeholder groups, she is also influencing the regulatory sector. Thank you for being here, Ruba, today. In the middle, I may welcome Mr. Fayez Sultan. He's the VP and Managing Director of Lucid Motors in the Middle East, a seasoned automotive expert with 20 years of experience in the industry. And before joining Lucid, he was the Senior Director of Automotive in Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Energy, Industry and Mineral Resources, leading the team that developed the automotive policy for the kingdom. And to my right, I'm very glad to also welcome Adam Ridgway. He's founder and CEO of One Moto, the award-winning electric two-wheeler, and I learned yesterday, four-wheeler company. One Moto delivers sustainable vehicle and smart ecosystem solutions for commuters and logistics services. And the mission of the company is to decarbonize the last mile in each country the company operates. Thank you very much for joining us today. Before we get into the discussion, please let me set the context. And this context is actually provided by GEMRIX, which is the Global E-Mobility Readiness Index by Arthur de Little. The 2023 edition of the index was just published last week. It's the third edition. And this time, we have looked into 35 markets across all continents in different stages of their e-mobility journey, including 9 markets from the MENA region. We have, for all of those markets, we have analyzed 50 data points across different categories, and I will come to that point in a second. In total, the index is made up of 1,700 data points, which makes it the most comprehensive e-mobility readiness index available in the industry. So what is GEMRIX? GEMRIX is actually made of 5 major categories, which are key drivers for e-mobility adoption in a given country. And you can see them on the right-hand side. These are macro factors: EV market and competitive landscape, customer readiness, charging infrastructure, and regulation and policies. The categories are broken down in specific metrics and analyzed with a standardized methodology. The final score of a given country is actually the aggregate of the individual scores of each of these categories. A country can score between 0 and 100, or can even go beyond 100. The higher the score, the higher the readiness of the country when it comes to e-mobility. A score of 100 implies that traditional combustion engine vehicles and electric vehicles are at the same level when it comes to acceptability, affordability, and availability. And the score above 100 shows that EVs are even more beneficial than combustion engine vehicles. So let's have a look at the results. Here you can see the ranking of this year's markets, 35 markets in total. And there's a very encouraging message that you cannot directly derive from this chart. That is, compared to the 2022 results, we have seen significant progress for all of the countries in the sample across the board. The markets that we have surveyed are divided in four different clusters. On the very left, you see the global benchmark countries. Last year, we only had one market in the global benchmark, which was Norway. That is considered the lead market in e-mobility worldwide. And this year, for the very first time, we have a second market closer to the 100 threshold. That is China. Norway actually has mastered the transition to e-mobility already, given that 88% of all new cars sold in Norway are either full electric vehicles or plug-in hybrids. 88% already. We have just heard that some manufacturers, like Volkswagen, have decided to stop even selling ICE vehicles in Norway because the market has actually disappeared. The second group are the ambitious follower markets. These are Germany, Singapore, and the UK. In those markets, all prerequisites for e-mobilities are in place. EVs are becoming actually mainstream. Sales are going up to almost 30% now. There's a broad range of EV models available, addressing different customer segments, and also public charging infrastructure has made significant progress. The third group, which is the largest group, are the emerging EV markets. In those markets, conditions for EVs are still less favorable. However, customers are becoming more comfortable with the idea of EVs, especially as infrastructure is ramping up. And this group is actually led by Hong Kong and the UAE. And for the first time, Saudi Arabia this year has entered the group. We still see drawbacks in those countries, but they all have clear intentions to further promote e-mobility, and we see significant investments to boost local e-mobility ecosystems. This is particularly true for the GCC region. I'll come to that point in a second. And the last group is the starter markets. EVs have just entered the game here. Consumers are excited about sustainable technologies, including EVs, but there's limited availability of EV options, and we still see a significantly higher total cost of ownerships and issues in affordability. There's also no low or only very limited infrastructure. However, those countries are also venturing into the e-mobility domain with multiple initiatives. It remains to be seen if we will, in the near future, see large-scale implementations. Let me highlight two examples from the GCC region. The first one is, take the UAE, which is ranked 7th in GEMRIX. The government focus in the UAE on sustainable transportation is evident. Dubai aims to have 42,000 electric vehicles on the roads in 2030. There's massive progress making in charging infrastructure deployment with already 700 charging stations, and more stations are to come to accommodate the fast growing number of EVs. This is also reflected in the relatively high customer EV readiness scores. 82% of individuals in the UAE are willing to purchase an EV as their next car. This is, next to Norway, the highest score globally. And as I said, for the first time, Saudi Arabia has entered the emerging markets cluster. Saudi Arabia is the biggest automotive market in GCC and is making grand efforts to build a domestic EV ecosystem. The launch of the local manufacturer Sear and the recent opening of the Lucid manufacturing plant will create substantial EV production capacity, and they will also foster development of a local supply chain. I just learned that there was an agreement signed between PIF and Pirelli in the plenary right now, which is a clear sign that this also is going to attract additional automotive companies. Earlier this week, the Korean automaker Hyundai has signed a JV agreement with the PIF, and they will also start producing electric vehicles in the country. New charging infrastructure company of PIF and Saudi electricity company will be another very important catalyst. So there's a lot of activities going on, and this will propel consumer demand. So we expect, and we can all expect, that Saudi Arabia is set out to take a leading role in e-mobility, and we will see a significant jump in its index score in the next 1 or 2 years. Let me conclude with 5 key insights from our study. And if you are interested in more details, please download the study from our website. There is a profile for each of the countries, so you can dig into the details for each of the 35 countries. 5 key insights. Number 1, e-mobility leaders, as we have seen, show high scores in all GEMRIC's categories. This clearly indicates that mastering the transition requires a concerted strategy which considers all key drivers for EV adoption and their mutual reinforcing effects. Secondly, countries moving to increased EV adoption follow similar patterns, but with difference in time by a few years, because some of them have started earlier. In countries with higher income, environmental protection plays a crucial role, while in countries with lower average income, cost is the primary determining factor. Also, when orchestrating the transition, the less advanced markets can learn a lot from the leaders. Number 3, regulation and policies play a key role. Typically, the transformation starts as a regulatory-driven journey until it becomes a demand-driven market. Only Norway actually has reached the tipping point, but other countries are getting closer to it. Number 4, incentives have proven to be highly effective to activate the market. And number 5 is many countries still struggle with the chicken and egg problem. Not enough EVs on the road, not enough infrastructure deployed, and vice versa. And especially in countries where passenger cars and commercial vehicles are the dominant vehicle types as opposed to two-wheelers, large-scale charging infrastructure programs are essential to accelerate the transition to EVs. Let me close with this, and now I join our guests for a discussion. Let me start with the first question. Faisal, why do markets need to get ready for e-mobility? Is it just a hype, or what are the benefits for the economy, for the society, and also for the environment?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it is very clear by now, I think, that sustainability is really a need, and it's not a good to have anymore in the world. A lot of the countries have realized that it is a challenge to overcome, but that is creating a lot of opportunities at the same time. And prime example of that is as you said, Norway and China and some of the other countries have really stepped up a lot earlier. But I think you are seeing many more countries now jumping in and realizing that it's a business opportunity. It also gives them a clean slate to start from. So internal combustion engines really had legacy investments which had to be utilized. But as those life cycles of those programs are ending, there is opportunity for new countries to jump in, because it is a different way of producing a vehicle that is now contributing towards the sustainability goals in the world.
Thank you. Ruba, do you want to add something from the perspective of an innovative mobility expert?
Yeah, of course. So I thank you first for the presentation and the introduction. Thank you for having me. Definitely we have to be ready for e-mobility for many different reasons, for environmental reasons, economic reasons, and many other reasons. But if we look at the current situation in many countries at this point, many countries have set decarbonization goals and targets. And to meet those targets, we have to be ready. So for example, in the UAE, we have the net zero target by 2050. And of course, we will not be able to meet that if transportation and the mobility sector does not contribute to the net zero target. And to achieve that goal, we cannot only work with one mode of transportation, for example, passenger cars, but it has to be all different kinds of transportation modes, from buses, taxis, passenger cars, to as well as two-wheelers. All of that will contribute and work together to achieve these goals. So definitely we have to be ready, because once a target is there, there's a roadmap. The roadmap is very seriously taken, and the market has to be ready for that transformation. So definitely we need to be ready. Thank you,
Ruba. And we have seen also in our study, Adam, that a lot of the e-mobility transition in big markets, especially in Asia, but also in this region or in Africa, actually driven by two-wheelers and not by four-wheelers. So what's your view on why do we need e-mobility from a two-wheeler perspective?
Well, this would end up sounding like a sales pitch. But the two-wheelers, I'll give you a couple of stats. So motorcycles are up to 50 times more harmful to the environment than SUVs and buses, which is quite significant. If you then take that across a global footprint, to give you a few more stats, Taiwan, there's 67 million motorcycles, UK 1.3 million, the UAE, Dubai 92,000, projected 300,000 in the kingdom by 2027, 37 million in India, 20 million in Pakistan. So the motorcycle market or the two-wheel market is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And we specialize and focus on decarbonizing the last mile. And as an industry that's growing around 27% year on year, it's a significantly growing business, which provides a lot of opportunities in the gig economy as well as within fleet operators. Environment isn't necessarily cared about as much as the commercial aspect. So when you look at 74% saving on your operations or your fleet operations, that ticks a massive box. But then there is that level of education, and then going into the rider welfare, reducing the hours, increasing productivity. So with the niche, fairly large niche that we focus on, there's so many statistics and verified, validated research of proof for the warrant of the need for decarbonized two-wheel vehicles.
So it's not just about transforming actually the propulsion of vehicles, it's also about transforming the industry, creating new value chains, creating new opportunities, and new ecosystems. So let me ask another question. The generic shows that currently 5 countries are leading the transition, 5 to 7 countries. Some markets apparently are more advanced in redesigning their automotive and mobility ecosystems. Others are behind. So what have they done differently? And what can the follower markets learn from them? Faisal, do you want to have a view on this, especially now that Saudi Arabia is one of the markets that is most ambitious and most active in the field?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of learnings from each other, and as I said in my first comment, a lot of the countries were like China and Norway. They took it at a very early stage. They realized the potential not just to the environment, but also as a business opportunity, as a value chain development, as an ecosystem development. The value chain is huge. It starts from financing and insurance, and it goes all the way to the charging infrastructure. And then when you talk about charging infrastructure, there's opportunities within that also. A lot of creative models are now coming out. So it's not a very traditional model. It has been now expanded when we talk about the ecosystem for EV or e-mobilities. So I think countries like Saudi Arabia have also realized that. And as you said, there are different ways. Every country is doing it. Some are demand-based, some are top to bottom, some are bottom to up development. But Saudi Arabia has, like you said, in GCC, the biggest market, 60% plus of the electric vehicles, total passenger vehicle market is in this country. So of course, it makes sense for them. About 4 or 5 years ago when I was working with the KSA government, we were studying the markets. KSA was the actual #1 market by sales without a manufacturing plant. So the manufacturing was definitely a need, and hats off to the Saudi authorities to actually go into the electric vehicle and make that the base of manufacturing, because it is going to open now, the infrastructure development and education. You mentioned, consumer education is a big part of it. It is very much easier, less cost to operate an electric vehicle, whether it's a two-wheeler, four-wheeler, commercial vehicle. Over the lifetime, you are definitely going to save money.
Let me ask one more question, because looking at the capacity, the manufacturing capacity that's currently being built in the country, probably the market will not be ready to absorb the vehicles that are being produced. So you're also going for export of EVs?
Yes, of course. I think right now we've started our AMP2, our Advanced Manufacturing Plant #2, first international plant outside of United States, now in King Abdullah Economic City. And as you've seen, we're starting with an assembly operation of the Lucid Air, the award-winning Lucid Air, longest range vehicle in the world. But we will expand into CBU, a complete build unit. And at that time, we're going to be producing 150,000 vehicles. And they will be for global consumption. We will definitely be exporting them, majority of them, 80+%.
Ruba, so what have the leading countries done differently? What can the followers learn from the leaders?
So if we look at the GEMREX, for example, and try to understand all the different criteria, we still see that Norway is leading e-mobility readiness. And that's due, of course, to the early mover advantage, strong government support. Another factor is abundance of clean energy, as well as a relatively wealthy society. And I think we can learn a lot from that, especially at this region. We can apply many things that were applied in Norway, especially in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia. We have relatively younger community. People are more tech savvy. The acceptance is much easier, and people are more accepting new technologies and new innovations than other places around the world. Also, the majority of the people can afford owning an electric vehicle. So I believe there's a lot to be applied and learned, especially the governmental support. Our governments here are known for setting goals and having strategies and committing to these goals and meeting these goals through a lot of initiatives. So I believe we can follow the path of Norway and get there. And we can see from the GEMREX also, how those countries have made a lot of progress. And I'm expecting much more progress in the near future.
You mentioned a very important point, which is affordability. Does or is e-mobility necessarily expensive, Adam?
It's unnecessarily expensive. If you take the average cost of an EV in the UAE, is around 203,000 dirhams. That's for a car. you've got economies of scale and the lithium price, depending on your energy source and so on. So things will change. It has to come down. But also the ownership model is going to change, in my eyes. It will be very much a subscription based as long as convenience is maintained. So in our region or realm, we make sure that we can produce, or we are producing the most premium vehicles in class and make sure they're affordable to all. So in the 10 countries we operate, it's through intelligent financing, asset finance. We've just raised, well, this year we've raised secured $190 million to make sure that people in the gig economy or consumers, whether it be a student, first-time worker, and so on, can have access to affordable EVs. For us, it's not about the profit, it's about the volume, and then making the difference accordingly, because it's the ecosystem surrounding it and those ancillary, the job creation, the in-country value. We create small or smaller micro-assembly plants to then domesticate supply chains, which adds on to the sustainability. And in the kingdom, that's what I'm here this week, is to discuss creating a sustainable assembly plant to start off with. Then when the infrastructure of the manufacturing supply chain is developed, then we can go into manufacturing. So it doesn't need to be expensive, but the customers must see value.
Very clear. Also, when we look into the different markets, we can see that actually electrification happens from different angles. In some markets, it's driven by four-wheelers. In other markets, it's driven by commercial vehicles. In other markets, it's driven by two-wheelers. In Asian countries or in African countries, it is the two-wheelers. So which opportunities also arise from this electrification from the different angles? Adam?
Yeah, if you take a country like Taiwan, electric vehicles are not the answer. If you take the lack of clean electricity, if you take Taiwan, 67 million motorcycles on the road, if they just switched to LNG, half their carbon would be cut overnight. So that's something that EVs aren't the answer in every market. And that obviously takes a lot of investment, but also considering that although the first EV electric car was built in 1884, we haven't really evolved that much to 2003 in terms of the technology was there, it's just got way better. And I think the Lucid Air is a primary example of that. But it's got so much better. But at the same time, looking at where EVs really originated and why they originated, it was China. Through the issue of them not having as much LNG, and then there was that sort of fight, geopolitical fight with America to go, right, this is now going to be what we double down on. Yeah.
We have seen in the automotive space, actually, we have seen more an electrification from the top to the bottom, from top down. I think Tesla is an example of it, but Lucid is an even better example of it, going down from the top. So what's your view on how this electrification is going to take place and how this is becoming a mass market phenomenon?
Yeah, I think it is a natural progression, and I think it was a necessity to do it that way because the technology was expensive, as we've discussed. You know, the batteries, if you go 6-7 years ago and then compare it today, I think more than double the price, you know, on batteries. So it is coming down, and as the price comes down for the batteries itself, the powertrain, I think that's when you can get into the mass markets, and I think it's naturally because of that reason. But I think if you track the prices of electric vehicles versus the same segment difference on ICE, you know, that gap is shrinking every year. And I think we'll continue to see that. And it's also easier because I think when you don't have the infrastructure ready, it's easier to give someone an electric car that can have a home-based solution to charge. And you know, who has large villas and homes, it is the most rich and affluent people. So I think that is the thinking behind the product.
Will we see an affordable Lucid premium mass market vehicle?
Yes, you will. Yes. So I think we're going to be announcing, you've probably seen our SUV, the Gravity, in Los Angeles Auto Show. We're going to be unveiling them. So that is going to still be a luxurious 7-seater, 6-seater, amazing SUV, just like the Air is. I'm 100% sure it will win a lot of awards again. But our third product that we will be manufacturing out of the kingdom is going to be a CUV, a mid-size CUV. So we are going to, that is the right approach. And once we have established our, technology capability, which now people know, we're producing a car that is much faster, much lighter, with a smaller motor. We have a deal with Aston Martin. Aston Martin, bought our technology to electrify their platforms. So I think we've kind of established that. Now we can walk towards that volume-based platforms.
Ruba, electrification from different angles. Anything to add from your side?
Yeah, but like on top of what my colleagues said, we have to scale up e-mobility. I think there are some untapped markets for e-mobility. It depends on the country, of course, but in some countries, trucks and logistics are a huge part of the economy and the backbone of the economy. Therefore, it's really crucial to also pay some attention to electrifying that sector, which is the trucks. And doing that will put a lot of load and a lot of challenge on the grid as well as the chargers hardware. But I look at these challenges, of course, as market and economy opportunities. This gives us more room to innovate, more room to invest, and more room for also clean energy and sustainability. So definitely there are many other segments to be tapped and to be focused on. Also, when we look at self-driving vehicles are a hot topic right now. They're trending. They're coming to the market soon. And most of them, let's say, if not all of them, are electric vehicles. So integration between the two is extremely important. I know autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles are totally, it's different. It's a different technology than electric vehicles, but they complement each other. And there are a lot of mutual interests as well as mutual challenges. So tapping in these segments are very important.
Absolutely agree. The commercial vehicle sector is super important also given, let's say, the emissions coming from the sector. But what we hear is it's easy to put 5,000 charging stations somewhere. The real challenge is the infrastructure behind the infrastructure. Yeah. Imagine you have 50, 60 trucks at the same location with megawatt charging.
The loads.
Yeah. Loads, that's going to be a challenge. What do you think about infrastructure, Fayez?
Well, I think, infrastructure is the key, right? For when you talk about not just passenger, but commercial vehicles also, as you said. And I think PIF, recently announced the EVIC company. So, we're very glad we're working very closely with them to make sure that it's the right locations because, there is a real thinking behind the locations itself. So, what you want to do when you give the charging solutions, you want to give it at places where it makes sense for the consumer. So I don't want the consumer to go to a gas station and plug it in and sit there and do nothing. I would rather have that at a supermarket where he has to go or she has to go anyways to shop for 30 minutes. Same thing when they're going to watch a movie, a movie theater, airport parking lot. These are very within the city.
Destination charging.
Destination charging. So I think that is very important when it comes to the commercial side and city-to-city travel. Yes, you need to have stations like a service station, and at that place you need to give something for the consumer to do. Now the charging speeds have gone up drastically also with the 900-volt architect in our car in Lucid Air, which you can charge in 12 minutes, 300 to 400 kilometers. Depending on the size of the DC fast charger, we are reducing the timing technology-wise. And I think that is what is really needed. There are other technologies that are being discussed that needs to be commercialized. The road, chargers to be on the road while the car is driving. It will take some time for that to happen, and there's a lot of investment that needs to happen. But right now we need to concentrate on the traditional way of charging and the location strategy and how to do that very
Right.
simply.
And I learned from you, Adam, that your company, as you are providing a full ecosystem, you're also thinking about charging solutions, battery swapping for two-wheelers. Can you comment on this?
Yeah, with battery, the infrastructure and so on, it's obviously a big part of, you can't just sell the vehicles, you need to offer absolutely everything because it helps with that transition from multiple sectors, and you need the government to lead by example, not necessarily subsidies, but you need to. So two things with a startup or a founder, an entrepreneur, you have the ability to innovate, but yet you don't always have the access to capital and resource. So when it comes to our battery development program or the charging program, we've developed swappable battery stations, which in this part of the world, everything we do is hot weather tested and defined for this region. If it works here, it will work other places as well. And obviously we test internationally. With thermo cooling as well as fire, it stops any problems that have happened elsewhere. So we have swappable battery banks, which we've got a POC rolling out with the RTA, Roads and Transport Authority in Dubai, as well as every other distributor we work with. We offer that if it's needed. In addition to that, we look at what's needed now, but then we work to what the future is. And if we rely on investment, that can take time. It's exactly as you said. You have to start off now and look to the future. I sort of disagree, but that's my mindset. I agree with the process, but I disagree with I can actually bring change now, so let me suggest. So we've got wireless charging, dynamic and static. It's ready to go. It's been invested in, developed with universities as well as ourselves. We're ready to go with that. And then the latest thing that we've been developing is, again, the future is wireless photon technology that can charge wirelessly any electric vehicle, which in a way is incredibly pioneering. But what it does do is it then creates a huge problem for all the investment that's gone into the charging stations and the multiple vendors and suppliers. So when you look at the battery charging infrastructure, you have to look at what that is now, what the future is, but then what that energy source is, making sure that if we evolve into multiple energy sources, that infrastructure will still work with what's been invested in.
Thank you, Adam. So we have to look at the time. Let's conclude the discussion. We have seen we have more advanced markets, we have starter markets in the generics. What needs to be done in your view? And if you had a free wish to one of your fellow members on the stage, what would it be? Ruba, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So maybe as a first step and something that urgently needed in all places who are trying to catch up with e-mobility, I think it's partnerships. The most important thing is creating strong, sustainable partnerships that will make the change faster and more robust. So without getting into details for the sake of time, but we really need those strong partnerships. If I have a wish for my colleagues here, maybe for Mr. Sultan, my wish will be for him and as well as all OEMs is to increase the marketing campaigns, awareness campaigns for younger generation as well as their potential customers because range anxiety, overheating anxiety in these regions is real. And the only way to overcome that is by education and awareness. And a quick wish also to Mr. Adam and others as well who are like startups and they have really, really great solutions is to reach out to regulators and start with trials and POCs and work closely with regulators because it's very difficult for regulators to regulate something that they don't understand. Mm-hmm. And the only way to achieve that is to work closely with innovators and startups. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Adam, what's your wish or recommendation?
Recommendation, absolute collaboration. It is with any industry. You can try and do it yourself. You can be an expert, but you're not going to be an expert in everything. So you either employ that resource, your burn rate goes up, your costs might have to go up, your prices go up. That then affects the end customer. So collaboration is key. In this region, KSA, UAE specifically, where I have most wisdom on, is the vision of the government is incredible. It's risk-taking. The countries have been built so quickly from educated, mitigated risks. So collaboration, public and private sector is crucial. My wish for being here this week is to ensure that the Kingdom is the first country on the planet to operate a decarbonized last mile delivery network. So Faisal, that's going to be an introduction to you, my friend. If there's a way of an introduction to communicate our mission, I'd be incredibly grateful.
Definitely.
Faisal, you have gone through the journey. You have fantastic vehicles on the road. You're building an ecosystem. You are a pioneer. So what's your recommendation and advice?
Well, the recommendation is, I think I will, make it 3 for 3. I think there's nothing, that can be done on a sole basis. So we worked very closely with the government here, and we are continuing to work very closely with the government and the other GCC countries. And I think that's the only way to do it, with partners like Adam and other companies, because as we said, we gotta get cleaner on the whole value chain. The customer buys a car, we produce a car, but there's a lot going on behind that, and even after that. So definitely partnerships is, and my advice would be, I think we all need to be the ambassadors and the pioneers, the educators, as mentioned, the marketing, having these panels. This is all good because we need to educate the customer that there's a lot of perception about lithium running out, materials not available. These are all really myths that really need to be declassified, and then in front of people that these concerns are not there anymore. The electric cars are very clean, and they are in the immediate step until other energies can come in and help us in the sustainability cause.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ruba. Thank you, Faisal. Thank you,
Thanks for
Adam. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.